Last week, President Trump said he was extending the ceasefire with Iran until, quote, discussions are concluded. Meanwhile, Iran continues to assert control over the Strait of Hormuz amid a U.S. attempt to blockade Iranian shipping. With talks at an impasse, Iran on Sunday offered a new proposal to the United States focused on reopening the strait and ending the war, while postponing nuclear negotiations to a later date. So, what should the U.S. do next? I'm Adam Gallagher, a contributing fellow at Defense Priorities, and today I'll be speaking with Defense Priorities Policy Director Ben Friedman to answer that question and look at the lessons from this war. Here are three things you need to know. All right. Hey, Ben, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if you can start off in the intro. I walked through kind of the state of play, the situation with the negotiations and the blockade and counter blockade and the strait. So, what do you think the U.S. should do amid this deadlock? And I also want to bring up your piece that you wrote for the American Conservative about a month ago or so, where basically you say the best thing the U.S. could do then was just walk. So, I'm wondering if you still think that's the case, and if so, why?
Well, I think the United States has no real interest in play in this war in Iran, except the problem that we caused through the war, which is the closure of the Strait of Hormuz and its effect on oil and gas prices. That problem doesn't need to get solved, but it would be better if it did. So the Iranians have apparently made this offer that says we'll reopen the strait if you go along with it, open your end your counter blockade, and let's defer talks on other matters, including nukes, until some future date. And I think that
Right.
is really what the United States should be proposing. The issue of nukes. We could have had a pretty good deal there before the war. Trump chose to bomb anyway. But now it's going to be much harder as a result of the war and the Iranian success in withstanding it to get a deal there. And I don't think we really need one. The Iranians have, for a long time had this kind of half-pregnant strategy with nukes, where they develop them in order basically to get sanctions relief. They were in the JCPOA. They wanted to get back into it. They were enriching for that purpose. And now their program is pretty decimated, and they're as a result of the strikes we did in June, and they're not particularly close to having a nuke, whether or not they want one. So it's not something we need to solve it right away, and maybe down the road we can get a deal. But even if we don't, I think we can live with the results. Then a lot of people say we need to do something about their missiles. I think that's essentially unreasonable. I mean, especially if they're not going to have nuclear weapons, you have to leave states with some ability to deter attack, to defend themselves. Any Iranian government, pretty much, even if they're nice liberal people that we invent in a laboratory somewhere, are going to probably want missiles to deter attacks on them. They've seen, as a result of this war in the past, strikes on them that they need deterrent capability. So they're just not going to give up on missiles, and they can always rebuild them when we destroy them. And proxies are similar. I think as a result of all the pressure we put on Iran for years, they've developed this sort of proxy network, and they're not just going to give it up very easily as a result of being bombed. Maybe in future talks we could do something about that, but it's not a major problem for the United States. Whatever Israel or Gulf states think, that could be their problem. I think we just need to deal with the Strait problem. And this offer the Iranians made would do that. Now, if this doesn't work out, if this offer to open the Strait somehow doesn't go anywhere because we don't take the deal and it goes away, I think we should just then walk away. The Iranians might impose a tariff, a tax on shipping through the Strait. That's not good because freedom of navigation is an important principle that the United States benefits from. Still, it's not a great deal for the global economy. It will increase oil prices a bit, hardly as much as this war, and oil traffic would slow again. With this tax, it wouldn't do that much for the Iranian economy. It might make them into a kind of middle power as opposed to a poorer one. I don't think it's going to affect the balance of power in the region. So we can live with that. It's not ideal. The best deal would be to agree with the Iranians to reopen the strait and defer talks on nukes. Next best thing is just walk away. Continuing the war, I think, is the worst option by far.
Sure. So, deal or no deal, How do you think the U.S. should address potential spoilers? I'm thinking namely of Israel, whether that's, a sort of returning to its mow the grass strategy in Iran, or, it does something in Lebanon that jeopardizes the current ceasefire. How do you think the U.S. should deal with that?
Yeah, the Trump administration, if it's going to get a deal that keeps the peace in Iran and reopens the strait, I think has to be willing to be tougher on Israel than they've been to this point. Uh, the furthest the Trump administration has gone, and this worked to get the ceasefire in place where Israel agreed after a while to impose a ceasefire in Lebanon, even though they've been violating it, that allowed for a ceasefire with Iran. Even there, we just sort of talk tough. Trump talked tough, told the Israelis to cut it out. But he's never really been willing to impose penalties on them. And I think they know that if they violate what they said they're going to do, they say really want to restart the war in Iran, they can spoil things and just sort of buck what the United States says, because even in past administrations, we haven't been willing to punish them, which means taking away their aid, taking away all the money we give them, or at least threatening meaningfully to do so. Part of it, not necessarily all of it, all the military support we give them, missile defense, so on and so forth. If you won't threaten that, what you say to them doesn't really matter. So that's the number one thing that we need to do if we're going to make a deal stick, is be willing to be tough with the Israelis. Otherwise, they can just restart the war and the Iranians won't go along with the deal. Or won't stick to it if they sign it in the first place. Other potential spoilers are probably the Gulf states, particularly UAE, which has become much more aggressive lately and broken off from Saudi Arabia in important ways. I don't think those states are going to be a real problem in terms of restarting the war. They might push the United States to bomb Iran and sort of try to solve their own security problems for them, get rid of Iranian missiles and so forth, so that, there's no threat to Abu Dhabi or Dubai. But when push comes to shove, I think they'll go along with what the United States does, because they've never really shown the temerity or the moxie to, fight Iran on their own. So I think we can bring them along.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're basically 2 months into this war. What do you think the big lessons for U.S. policymakers should be?
I think there are three big lessons, really, which are old lessons that we should have not forgotten, but should relearn from the war. The first one is about the limits of air power, strategic air power in particular, which is where you just try to win wars from the air, not support ground troops from the air, which works pretty well. Strategic air power rarely works, rarely if ever. It here has not only failed to have these big political effects that President Trump and others hope for in inducing a popular uprising and regime change, but it didn't even really succeed tactically in the sense of destroying all the targets that we thought it might, or that the Pentagon said they were aiming at. So the Iranians still have a significant missile capability. We haven't destroyed all their ballistic missiles and launchers, basically because they can put them in secure places where they're not so vulnerable to airstrikes. We haven't knocked out their entire Navy. So they've had plenty of capability left over, and that's unsurprising based on past wars. There's always this, I think, tendency to believe that technology has created almost magical solutions to these long-standing problems, and so the limits of air power are gone, and maybe you can do political magic with it, but this war shows that that's not true, that it's still a very limited instrument, and you shouldn't expect big results even tactically, let alone these sort of dreams of regime change and so forth, just by bombing people. The second big lesson is quite related to the first, and that's that nationalism is a powerful force in modern politics and international politics, and that when you bomb people, they tend to react in a way that they reaffirm their identity, that they cheer for the government that you're attacking, even if they didn't love that government before you bombed them. There's a rally around the flag effect. People sort of feel a greater sense of common identity when they're under attack. It's a basic facet, I think, of human psychology, or at least sociology. And so bombing people and demanding that they do things tends to be counterproductive. It's a limited need. It's actually a limited amount of violence in sort of the grand scheme of warfare that creates communal effects, not capitulation. Most of the time, there are always exceptions. So the second big lesson is that nationalism is a big force and shouldn't underestimate it. Third big lesson is that our bases in the Middle East and really in the world are increasingly vulnerable. There's been a precision revolution where missiles and air power become much more accurate. That used to be something that the United States sort of enjoyed alone, and then other big powers. Now it's spread to countries like Iran, where they have missiles and drones that can target those bases, and they also have them in mass. So it's not just the accuracy, it's the sheer number of things they can fire, particularly drones, that just make our bases a burden much more than they were. Where at the same time, because of the same technologies, the air power and the precision we have in airframes and missiles, we don't actually need the bases as much because it makes long range strike work better, or at least makes it more effective. So we can do the attacks. You know, if you want to have wars like this, I hope we don't, but if you want to have wars like this, you can do them from carriers and from bombers. You don't need to do it from local bases. So the third big lesson is, the bases are vulnerable and you don't need them anyway.
Yeah. I wrote a piece, as I mentioned earlier, for the National Interest, touching on a lot of these things recently. And I think maybe another lesson, frankly, is just that this costly presence that the U.S. has had in the region for so long is ineffective in helping stabilize or create any kind of like regional balance of power. Well, thanks.
Those lessons together. I think that the nationalism lesson and the bases or destabilizing lessons go together well. And again, it's sort of, but by hanging around people's countries, this was something people talked about a lot in the Al Qaeda post 9/11 days. I think accurately that we tended to induce a backlash of identity politics, not necessarily just nationalism, but identity politics against the U.S. presence that offended people. And so, where we think we're stabilizing things by deterring attacks or something, we're often a destabilizing force. Even when we're not bombing countries and being aggressively destabilizing as we are now, there's a sort of general destabilizing effect. So that I think it's just one more reason to head for the exits in the Middle East.
Yeah, and maybe if there's a silver lining from this war, that will be one of the results of it. I don't know. We'll have to stay tuned on that one. All right. Well, thanks a lot, Ben. I want to encourage everybody to continue to check out Defense Priorities Analysis on defensepriorities.org on the war in Iran and all the other major issues going on in international politics today. Thank you.
Thanks.